This show is produced by the Harwood Podcast Network.
Hi, I'm Cindy Harris. We love making this show available to you free of charge. And if you'd like to help us keep it that way, make a contribution to our Karma Jar or become a show sponsor. To learn more, visit our website. Well, I'm really excited today because in this episode we're going to start our first beading project together. And what I thought we'd make is a simple bracelet. Now, on each of the projects that I show you how to do on this show, I will always include a drawing just like this. Now, this is something that I will have up on our website on the show notes page for you to use as a guide. And what I've done is I've basically drawn the design of the bracelet and included all the supplies that we're going to need. So let's just go over this a little bit. Now, the first thing on our supply list is a clasp. Now, as you recall, we learned about a number of different clasps in our last episode on findings. And what I have drawn here today is a little simple spring clasp, but you could use a toggle clasp if you'd like. Whatever you would want to use is absolutely fine, but you will need to get one clasp. Now, the next thing on our list is some beading wire. And if you recall, beading wire is this very fine wire. It's super sturdy. It's great for bracelets and necklaces when we're stringing. So we're going to need 10 inches or 25 centimeters of beading wire. And then we're going to need 70 seed beads. And seed beads are these tiny little beads that you get. And they're going to provide a little bit of the pop of a sparkle for us on this bracelet. And then we're going to be using some 6mm beads, and this is the key for it, and you can see we're going to be needing 10 of those. And for this project I've just chosen a really simple black bead. And then what's really going to give the interest to this bracelet are these 10mm check glass beads. Now, you can use whatever kind of beads really look good to you in the store, but I just thought these were beautiful. They have this great little intricate silver design on them, and you can see I'm using just 3 of those. And then for our findings, other than the clasp, we are going to be needing some crimp beads, and we're going to be using 2 of those. And that's basically here at the ends what we're going to connect our beading wire to our clasps. So let's just kind of go over our design before we start putting it together. We're going to start by putting on a clasp. Then you'll see here we have a crimp bead. We got 5 seed beads, and then our pattern of a 6mm bead, 5 seed beads, 6mm bead, 5, until we get down here to our 10mm bead, and you can see the pattern. We're just going to continue along. Now, the length of a bracelet is normally 7 inches or 18 centimeters long, and that's what normally goes around a woman's wrist. Now, if you find that your wrist is a different size, of course you can augment it. What I would do is change the sizing by changing the amount of seed beads that you need here at the beginning. Maybe you only need 2, or maybe you need to add 7. Whatever it is, just kind of check it out for yourself. But for most women, a 7-inch bracelet really works well. Now, when you're planning your beading projects, one of the first decisions you have to make once you decide the beads you want to use is what color findings you want to use. Now, for this bracelet, the one I'm doing is going to be predominantly black and silver, so I'm going to be using silver findings. So that means a silver clasp, silver crimp beads, and then the silver beading wire. But if you wanted to go with the gold, it's absolutely fine. You just want to make sure that you're consistent all the way through with your findings. Now, I've got my little bead board out because I don't want my beads skittering all over the place, so I've got that. I've got my tools here and my design here, and I like to have a little ruler on hand. It helps me measure out my beading wire and make sure that my bracelet is ending up to be about 7 inches long. So let's get started making our project. Now when I'm beading, I do have to wear glasses because of the up close work. And so if you need yours, you may want to get those out. And we can go ahead and get started by getting our beading wire cut. Now if you look on our list of supplies, we need about 10 inches or 25 centimeters of beading wire. So I'm just going to take, and on my ruler, measure about 10 inches. And I'm going to be using my wire cutters here. You don't want to use scissors because that can kind of, cutting this wire can dull it. And I'm just going to give it a little snip. Okay, and I'm now done with my beading wire. If you look at our drawing here, the first thing we need to get is the spring end of our clasp and a crimp bead. So I've put those items in my little bead tray here. Now when you're using a clasp, there's always two parts of it. And in this case, I'm using a spring clasp. So I have that end here and then the little solid ring that's the other end of it. And then I have my crimp bead. So I'm going to take my beading wire and I'm going to thread my little crimp bead on my beading wire. And then I'm going to take the spring end of my clasp, and you'll notice here it has this little circle. That's where we feed the wire, and you're going to want to make sure that that is totally closed. Sometimes they come apart because it's almost like a little jump ring that's been soldered on there. And I'm going to take my wire and I'm going to feed it through the little ring like this. So now I have my clasp and my crimp bead, and I'm going to take the other end of my wire and I'm going to feed it through, back through actually, that little crimp bead, and that's what's going to secure my clasp. So there you see I almost have like a little loop here. Now I'm going to want to pull that bead tight up against the clasp, but I don't want to have a lot of extra wire because I'm just going to be snipping that off. So what I do is I kind of position the crimp bead where I want it, kind of hold that in place, and then I pull the wire until it kind of tightens up right against my loop. And then I really snug that crimp bead up, just like that. Then I'm going to hold that together with one hand, and then I'm going to take my flat pliers here, and just with the end of it, I'm going to put that over the end of my crimp bead, and I'm going to squeeze it real tight. And that flattens the crimp bead, just like that, and then you'll see this is not moving. So, perfect. And then I have just a little bit of a tail there, and then I'm going to take my wire cutters and I'm just going to snip that. So we have our clasp and our crimp bead, and now we can start putting our seed beads on. Now we're going to start by getting our seed beads. Now seed beads are super tiny, so you are going to want to put a few of them out. I tend to put them in out just a little bit at a time and put them in one of the little wells here. Kind of spread them out with my finger. And what we're going to do, if we go back to our design, we see after our crimp bead we need to add 5 seed beads. So I'm just going to take the end of my wire, and I'm going to thread 5 of those on. So there I have 5 little beads, and I'm just going to push them down to my clasp. And see, they're just going to go right snug up against my little crimp bead there. And if we look back on our drawing, now we add one of our 6mm black beads. Now these are big enough I can just pick them up with my hand and thread that right on my wire. So you can see this is going to be our pattern for this next few sections. We're basically going to do this with 1, 2, 3, 4 of the 6mm beads. Now if you look here, I'm going to line what I've done up against my drawing, and you can see here's my clasp, my 5 seed beads, my first 6mm, another 5, another 6mm, another 5. And you can see how the pattern of the beads really follows the design, which is great. Now, the drawing I've done is not exactly 7 inches, so don't follow that. I tried to make the beads big enough to where it'd be easy for you to see. But you can see after we do our 4 6mm beads, then we're going to do 5 more seed beads, and then we're going to put one of our 10mm beads on. Now I've run out of seed beads on my little tray here, so I'm going to just sprinkle a few more out. Add 5 more. And now I'm going to add one of my 10mm beads, and these are the real showstoppers, I think. So I'm going to thread that through, and there we go. Now you can see I've got my first 10mm bead, then I'm going to add 5 more seed beads and then a 6mm bead. And then you can see I go ahead and add 5 more seed beads and a 10mm bead. And then I'm just going to continue following the design of the pattern. And now you can see I've got all of my 10mm beads on. So now it's just a question of continuing on with the pattern of 5 seed beads and a 6mm bead. And I'm just going to continue that following the rest of the pattern until I get to the last set of 5 seed beads. Now at this point, I always like to just check the length and make sure that I'm getting pretty close to 7 inches. So I'm going to pull my ruler out, and I'm going to lay that out, and you can see I'm right on. So this is going to be perfect. So let me just show you how we're going to add our last crimp bead and then our little solid ring to end the clasp here. So again, we're going to get out one more crimp bead, and I'm going to thread that on my beading wire. So there it is. And then I'm going to take my solid ring and I'm going to feed that through, and then I'm going to feed the end of the wire back through just the crimp bead like we did before. So there we go. Now, here's the key with the end of your bracelet. So here's your the ring that your clasp is going to join to. But you can see this is pretty far away from these seed beads, so we really need to snug that up. So I'm just going to keep pulling my wire until my crimp bead is super close to my seed beads, and you'll see I'm just going to pull the wire until my little ring is close to my crimp bead. So you just want to tighten that up. That's pretty good. And then to make sure that crimp bead works, I'm going to get my flat nose pliers and I'm just going to squeeze the heck out of that crimp bead, and then that is going to tighten up and hold everything in place. Then I've got this tail. I'll use my little wire cutters here and just snip that off. Now if we come back and take our finished bracelet, you can see it matches up perfectly to what our design was. We have our clasp, our seed bead pattern with the 6mm beads, and we go into the 10mm beads, and there it is, our first little bracelet. And you can see that fits around my wrist perfectly. Now, if you're ready to start your project, just go to our website and go to the Bead Workshop show notes, and I'll have the design with a list of all the supplies that you'll need right there for you. And as always, if you have any questions for me, please send me an email. I'll see you next time.